Ali Shihabi is the executive director of the Arabia Foundation, a think tank focusing on the geopolitics of the Arabian Peninsula. He joins me live now from Washington, D.C. And we're hearing in the report there the point about there being quite a significant difference between the past statements and actions of President Trump about Islams and Muslims and the remarks today. Are there questions still over the credibility of his speech?
Well, look, the symbolism is extremely important. I mean, the credibility, he's come and said it publicly, and after having said what he said on the campaign, to have made Riyadh his first stop and to have come and addressed a collection of Muslim leaders led by Saudi Arabia is really quite extraordinary. And this also talks to his base in America, which makes them think also after having heard, all the negative things that they heard during the campaign. So I think it is an important step, really, and it deserves a certain amount of recognition, despite what the cynics are saying, really.
You mentioned his base in the States, and it's very interesting because you look at the kind of imagery that we've seen today of, the cultural and political context and the people that President Trump has been surrounded by, and you kind of compare that to what he said about Muslims in the past, but perhaps particularly on the campaign trail as a way of pushing his nationalist agenda at the time. Will his base, his backers in the US, be accepting of this changed approach?
Well, it will make some of them think, you see. He was a politician. People blame him for Islamophobia, but, you have to blame, the media, the news media, the entertainment media, and politicians since 9/11 for having used fear to advance, whether it was to make money as far as entertainment was concerned, or politicians to get elected. So, he didn't invent it. He discovered the buttons that he had to push to get elected. And to his credit, once he assumed the responsibilities of the presidency, and also to the credit of the people around him, Secretary Mattis, Secretary of Defense, Tillerson of State, his national security advisor, he brought highly experienced people who understood the realities of the Middle East and explained to him that, the first line of defense against terrorism, frankly, for America, are her Muslim allies, led by Saudi Arabia. And it's in recognition of that, I think, that he came out, and that is to be commended.
And in terms of the US allies against extremism, it seems to have been sort of framed very much in terms of arms deals and mutual economic benefits. We haven't heard a great deal about democracy, rule of law, and human rights.
Well, I'll tell you, the issue of arms deals and economic benefits. Arms deals have been going on. Obama sold Saudi Arabia $115 billion of arms, more than was signed today. And economic deals have been going on. But what I think politicians, both in Saudi Arabia and America, found out was that the American heartland didn't understand the economic impact of that and didn't appreciate what an ally like Saudi Arabia brought to the table, which was jobs. So I think that highlighting the arms sales and the economic benefits was also sending a message again to the American heartland that, your ally Saudi Arabia is generating hundreds of thousands of jobs. It suited the president and it suited Saudi Arabia. So I think that's why it was done, really. But on the issue, he also made a very important point, which I think was very reassuring for the Gulf leaders, which was highlighting the role of Iran. Iran has positioned itself as somehow fighting terrorism. But Iran's role, in hosting the family of bin Laden after 9/11, and allowing the founder of ISIS to transit through Iran, in working cynically, cooperating when it suited her purpose with ISIS and Al-Qaeda, has been hidden from public opinion in the West. And the Iranians have succeeded, with the charade of democracy and elections that they have, with clever diplomats presenting a face to the world that is different from the reality, which is led by, which is led by a theocratic.
Perhaps also what is interesting is that you seem to be portraying this very much as a deep-seated shift on the part of the Trump administration. But one thing that has emerged, certainly from the first 100 days, is perhaps inconsistency, not just in terms of foreign policy, but also on the domestic front. President Trump has been engulfed by political and legal scandal at home. We know that a meeting that he had with the Russian foreign minister where he divulged intelligence is something that is a topic of debate right now. Do you think that actually it's as clear-cut and black and white as you're portraying it? because on the one hand, it signals
Well,
a
Mariam,
shift towards the traditional allies, but on the other hand, there's a lot of friendliness towards the Russians, who are allies of Iran.
Well, you talk about inconsistency. Let me tell you that his previous national security advisor came out with a very strong statement. I think in the first week they were in office against Iran, and he put them on notice. So this is a consistent application of that policy. It hasn't changed. His Secretary of Defense said the same thing even before they came in to office. So I think as far as the Middle East is concerned, you know, we're not experts in domestic U.S. politics, and I'm not going to opine on that. But as far as his policy towards the Middle East has been concerned, it's been extremely consistent. As to his dealings with Russia, Russia is a global power. Saudi Arabia deals with Russia and has cooperated with us on OPEC. So I don't think we hold his relationship with Russia as something directly impacting what's going to happen in the Gulf. And I think that that's a much
Shihabi
larger
in
relationship,
Washington, D.C.,
and everybody
thank you.
deals with Russia.
Thank you for taking the time to speak to us.
Thank you, Mariam.